There was one duty at the lighthouse. That came before the lamp. Before the fuel, before sleep, every night after dark, I was to open the logbook and write one line. Vessel approaching, bearing steady. The same 6 words in the same place every night. The harbor authority told me no ship had passed that point in over 100 years. They told me to write it anyway, and they would not tell me what was on its way. I took the relief posting because no one else would. A lighthouse on a rock 2 hours off a dying coast. One keeper at a time, 3 months on, then out. The pay was strange, too high for the work. I should have wondered about that. I told myself men just didn't like the loneliness. The harbor authority met me on the quay. An old man in a grey coat with the clerk's careful hands. He gave me the keys, the fuel schedule, the lamp drill, and then he gave me a sealed envelope and told me very precisely not to open it until I was alone in the tower with the lamp lit. He said it the way you'd give a man a rule you had decided long ago not to think about. In the boat across, the pilot didn't speak much. But when the rock came up out of the fog, grey and streaked and crowned with that one tall light, he said one thing. He said, whatever the book tells you to write, write it every night. The last 2 who didn't aren't on the coast anymore. Then he put me off on the rock and turned the boat around. Before, I had both feet on the stone. I lit the lamp my first night exactly on the drill. Wick trimmed, fuel set, the great glass lens turning slow and even over the dark water. Then I sat at the desk in the watchroom and I opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet in a clerk's hand, and the duty was as plain as the man on the quay had made it sound. Each night after full dark I was to enter one line in the logbook. Vessel approaching, bearing steady. Word for word, no more, no less. And below the line in a ruled column, a single figure. The vessel's distance off in nautical miles. The sheet told me what to write there too. 12. That was all. No explanation. No ship's name. No account of why a lighthouse would log a vessel that wasn't there. So I opened the logbook to find my place. And the logbook was already nearly full. Page after page, going back years. The same line in a dozen different hands. Vessel approaching, bearing steady. Every night, every keeper before me. The same 6 words, copied down the decades, like a prayer. No one dared be the first to stop. And the distance column told its own story. Years ago, near the top, the figures were large. 40 miles, 38. And as I turned the pages forward night by night, year by year, the number got smaller. Steadily, patiently, the last keeper's final entry. The night before I arrived. Read 12. There was a radio set in the watchroom for weather and for the authority. My second morning, I raised the old man on the quay, and I asked him plainly, what ship? He was quiet a long moment. Then he said, in that careful clerk's voice, there is no ship. He said no vessel had passed that point in over 100 years. The channel had silted, the trade had moved, the rock guarded an empty stretch of sea now. He said it the way a man recites a thing he has been made to recite. So I asked him the obvious question. If there was no ship, why log one every night? Why was the book full of it? Why had 2 keepers stopped being on the coast? And the line went quiet except for the hiss of the open channel. When he answered, his voice had changed, lower. The light isn't there to be seen, he said. It is there to keep something out at sea. And the log isn't a record. It is part of the keeping. He told me a keeper who writes the line each night holds the vessel where it is. 1 line, 1 night, 1 mile held. Write it, he said. Whatever you do, do not miss a night. And do not, under any circumstances, write a number smaller than the one already on the page. Then he wished me a quiet watch. And he cut the channel. And he did not raise me again for the rest of my time on the rock. I obeyed. Of course I obeyed. What else does a man alone on a rock do, with the one instruction he has been given? Each night after full dark I sat at the desk, dipped the pen and wrote the line. Vessel approaching, bearing steady. And in the column, the distance. My first night, 12, as the sheet had told me. The second night I wrote 12 again. The old man had said never write a number smaller. He had not said the number wouldn't change on its own, because on the third morning, when I came up to the watchroom to trim the lamp, the logbook was open. To the page I had written the night before, and my line was there. In my hand, vessel approaching, bearing steady. But the number beside it was not the number I had written. I had written 12. The page now read 11. My 12 had been struck through with one clean line, and 11 written above it in fresh ink in a hand. That was not mine. I want to be clear about the tower. One door locked from the inside. One man on the rock. No boat in 2 hours of empty sea. I had trimmed the wick myself at midnight and gone down to the cot. And I had come up at dawn to find a stranger's hand had been at my book in the night, and moved the ship 1 mile nearer. I told myself the things you tell yourself, that I'd misremembered the figure, that the previous keeper had left a loose page, that the damp on the rock did strange things to old ink. So I did what I should have done from the start. I tested it. That night I wrote the line, and beside it I wrote the distance. 11, the figure the strange hand had left me. And then I did something the sealed sheet had not authorized. I wrote the number larger. 12. I pushed the ship back out 1 mile, back to where I'd started, to see if it would hold. I sat the whole watch in the chair beside the desk, the lamp turning overhead. And I did not sleep, and I did not take my eyes off the open book. For 6 hours, nothing touched it. The page stayed as I'd left it. 12, and near dawn, when the grey came up in the window, I let myself believe I had won. Then I blinked. That is all. I blinked the way a tired man blinks. 1 slow second with my eyes shut. And when I opened them, the 12 was struck through. And below it, in that older, patient hand, sat a new figure. 10, not 11. Not back where it had been. The book had taken the mile I'd tried to give back, and then taken another one for the insult, and along the bottom of the page. In the same hand, 1 short line had been added that I had never written. Do not push us back. We have come a very long way. After that, I stopped testing it. I wrote the figure it gave me exactly, and I went looking through the tower for what the keepers before me had known. A lighthouse on a rock keeps its history. There is nowhere to send it. In a cupboard under the stair I found the old records, supply lists, weather books, and a packet of yellowed clippings that some keeper, decades back, had thought worth keeping. They were all about one ship, a coastal steamer. She'd worked this channel when the channel was alive, and on a black autumn night. The records gave the year as 1911. She'd come in too fast in heavy fog, missed the safe water, and gone down on the rocks of this very light. All hands. No survivors. The sea took every one of them, and never gave a single body back. And here was the part 1 old keeper had underlined hard in pencil. On the night she sank, the light had failed. The keeper that night had let the lamp go dark. Drink, the clipping said, or sleep, or despair. It didn't matter which. The ship had come looking for a light to steer by, and found the rock instead. And the underlined keeper had written 1 line of his own in the margin. She was promised a harbor, and given the rocks. So now she comes back for the harbor she was owed. 1 mile a night. For as long as a keeper will hold her off. The log is the only anchor we have. Write the line. Hold the rope and pray you are not the keeper. On the night, she finally makes the last mile. So I held the rope. Every night, the line. Every night, the figure she gave me copied true, and every dawn, my own line crossed out and re-inked 1 mile nearer in that patient hand from the cold water. 10, then 9, then 8. I learned to read the weather of the page. On calm nights, the figure dropped by 1. On the bad nights, the nights the fog came down so thick the lamp was just a smear of gold in wet wool. She'd take 2, as if the fog were her own water and she could move farther through it. When she felt at home, and she began to leave me more than figures. Little lines along the bottom of the page. In that same hand, the way a passenger might leave word ahead. The sea is kind tonight. We can see your light now. Tell the harbor we are nearly in. By my last week, on the rock, the figure was at 3 miles. And the notes had changed again. They had stopped being about the ship. The keeper before you held us at 4 for a whole winter, 1 read. He was patient. You are not as patient. And the next night. We have looked at the relief schedule. We know your watch ends soon. We would rather make harbor. On the keeper who is already tired. That was the first time the cold thing in the water told me that it had been reading more than just the log. I am going to tell you exactly what I did on the last night, because I have thought about it every night since, and I still do not know if it was the worst thing I could have done, or the only thing left. The figure stood at 1 mile. One more night of writing the line, and she would write 0 herself by dawn. And I did not need the old man on the quay to tell me what waited at 0. So I decided I would not write the line at all. No line, no anchor. If the log was the rope that drew her in, 1 mile at a time, then I would let go of the rope. I would write nothing, and I would see if the ship, unwritten, simply stopped. So that night I lit the lamp and trimmed the wick, and I sat at the desk with the logbook open and the pen dry. And for the first time in 3 months, I did not write the line. I folded my hands, and I watched the empty page, and I waited her out. The lamp turned, the hours went, the page stayed blank under my hands. And I let myself think for 1 foolish hour that I had finally cut the rope. And then, with my own 2 hands flat on the desk, and the pen lying dry in the well, a line of ink began to write itself across the blank page. Vessel approaching, bearing steady. In the patient hand from the cold water. She did not need me to hold the rope anymore. She wrote her own line now. And in the column, the figure wrote itself last of all, wet and black and final. 0. I went up to the gallery because I could not stand to be in the room with the book. And I should not have, because from the gallery rail in the last of the dark before dawn, I could see the harbor. The little dead harbor on the coast that no ship had entered in 100 years. And there was a ship in it. A coastal steamer, old-fashioned, low and long. Her single funnel cold, sitting at perfect anchor in water too silted to float her. Lit along her rail by a soft, drowned greenish light. That did not come from any lamp I know. She had made the harbor she was owed. On my watch. On the one night, the keeper did not write the line, and along her rail stood her passengers. All of them turned toward the rock, toward the light, toward me. 100 years late. And finally in. The radio crackled behind me in the watchroom. The old man on the quay. For the first time since my second day, his voice was very quiet. You let her in, he said. I am sorry, truly I am. But a ship that makes harbor has to give up a passenger to the keeper who let her in. That is the toll. That is how the next keeper is found. Go down to the quay, he said. She is waiting to put someone ashore. And then you can come home. So I went down the long stair to meet whatever was being put ashore in my name. And the figure that came up the quay steps toward me, dripping patient, holding a sealed envelope and a heavy brass key, had a clerk's careful hands, and it wore my face. So here is what I will leave you with. Somewhere off a dead coast, there is a rock and a tall light, and a keeper who sits down every night and writes 1 line in a book about a ship you will never see. He is not recording her. He is holding her. 1 line, 1 night, 1 mile, a rope let out across 100 years of cold water to keep a drowned thing. 1 more mile from the harbor it was promised and never given. I am the keeper now. I write the line every night. The figure stands at 12 again. She went back out to 12, the moment I took the pen, the way she always does for a new hand on the rope. And I will hold her at 12 as long as I can stay patient, as long as I do not get tired. So, if you ever take a posting, that pays too well. For work, too quiet. And they hand you a sealed envelope. And 1 small rule. You don't understand. Do the rule every night. Never miss it. And never, ever believe that letting go of the rope will make the thing on the other end. Let go of you. Because somewhere out past the fog, bearing steady, something is always 12 miles out. And counting down. Sleep well. If this kept you watching, subscribe. There are other lights and other books, and out past every one of them something is still bearing steady and still coming in.